able to answer that question. Because if you can't answer that question, we're going to be throwing solutions against the wall like spaghetti and seeing what sticks. The answer is, in many countries around the world, that is a woman's job. It is a woman's job to make sure that her family eats. The man in the family is not a jerk, going out to drink beer and visit prostitutes. I mean, most men in the developing world, as here, are good men. But traditionally, their role is to grow food and sell it in the market and bring cash into the family. And it's the woman's job to grow food and use that food to feed the family. So this is extremely critical to keep in mind. The majority of hungry people around the world are not actually the people that you see in the Dab. Thankfully, this is a very high concentration of people who are hungry for very specific reasons. But the majority of people who are hungry around the world are smallholder farmers. These are people who are farming land that may be the size of this stage, might be the size of a third of this auditorium. People who are farming very small plots of land on very marginal land, and they're just trying to sort of scratch out an existence. So in some ways, they're hidden. These people are very visible. But most of the hungry are hidden. And even within that family, not everybody in that family goes hungry. Moms always eat last, and they always eat least. I should do that. Maybe that would help me lose some weight, actually. But moms are the ones who always feed the husband first. After he eats, you feed the children. And after they eat, a mother will eat what's left, which is very often nothing. So hunger is complicated. Even on that same farm, even in that same family, not everybody is equally hungry. So I want to introduce you to one of my dearest friends who I've been very blessed to know. And her name is Miriam. She's a small farmer in Burkina Faso, which is a tiny country in West Africa, just north of Ghana. And her family and her farm are very, very typical of the kind of farms we see across Africa. Miriam lives in a polygamous household. She has her husband. She's the first wife. She had 7 children of her own. There's a second wife, and she had 3 children of her own. So they've got 10 children, 3 adults, 13 people in this family. They live in a compound. They've got the man's hut, they've got Miriam's hut, and they've got the second wife's hut. They all have a farm together, and the way that land is distributed in most smallholder farms in Africa is that you've got his land, her land, and our land. So the man has a plot of land on which he grows mostly grains. On Miriam's farm, her husband is growing millet, rice, and sorghum. And he takes that crop to the market and he sells it. He will put away, Miriam's husband, she's got a good husband, he will put away a portion of every harvest for the family. It's not enough to feed the whole family, but it's a good base, it's a good staple for the family. Other men don't do that, but Miriam's husband does. Then Miriam has her own land on which she grows vegetables and greens for the family to eat. This is actually where the family's nutrition comes from. It's from the woman's garden. So that is a really, really important piece of the equation. Grains are good, but it's not a whole meal. It's not all the nutrition that we need. So the woman's garden, kitchen garden, is very, very critical. So she's growing sweet potatoes, she's growing spinach, she's growing kale, she's growing collards, she's got all that. And those are very nutrient-dense foods. Then they've got the family land on which they may grow more grain, they may grow something else to sell in the market. So Miriam's time every day is spent first working on her husband's land for a couple of hours, then working on the joint land, then working on her land. So I had the opportunity to live with Miriam for 3 days in Burkina Faso. Some of you may have seen on our website that every year I do live on $1 a day for 2, 3, 4 days, each time in a different developing country, just to see what it's really like. It's hard. I don't recommend it. And what I try to do is do everything that Miriam does. So the first day I was there, we got up at 5. We went and collected shea nuts before the pigs got to them. We then went to the husband's land and did some weeding on the land. And then we walked back and made breakfast. So her day starts at 5 a.m. Then she wanted to show me the community garden, which she had started. So we went there and we did some weeding and picked some vegetables from there. Then we had to feed the animals. She has a donkey and a cow, so she's actually quite wealthy, relatively speaking. It is a lot of hard work. One of the things that is also a hidden kind of poverty is time poverty. Women are working, generally speaking, about 17 to 18 hours a day, and they don't have a lot of extra time. So when we go to countries and we introduce new solutions, whether that's new food or new techniques or new seeds or new whatever, we have to really keep in mind that if we're adding something extra for women to do, that just makes time poverty worse. What we need to do is a holistic solution at the same time. So women aren't, you saw the women here with the sticks, they're not spending hours every day collecting firewood. If we can free those hours, then we can introduce something new. I've seen a lot of projects, a lot of really well-meaning projects around the world fail because they didn't take this into consideration. A poor, hungry person in Africa is not a lazy person. They work way harder than we do. Hard physical labor, in the sun, little sleep, on the ground. These are hard working people. So they're not sitting there waiting for us to bring them the solution. They are working their butts off trying to keep their families alive. We have to take that into consideration. Chances are the parents are illiterate. The children may have some schooling, depends, boys usually more than girls. Their tools are really rudimentary. Most of the tools that I've seen are just a stick with a hammered piece of iron at the end. That's your hoe. That's the primary tool for farming. And oftentimes it's not even a long-handled hoe. It's like a short-handled hoe. And so I invite you to try this. You don't have to try it now, but later. So for 2 minutes straight, try this exercise. Try to bend over like this and hoe the ground for 2 minutes. Right? And tell me that's not hard. Then put a baby on your back and try to do that for another 2 minutes. It's really hard work. But those are the tools that they have to work with. Children are everywhere on the family farm. Even when they're not in school, they're running around, they're playing in the fields, they're playing with the animals, they're helping their parents on the farm. So children are everywhere, and they get into everything. If you have little brothers and sisters, or if you have kids, I mean, what you know is like everything goes in the mouth, hands are into everything, so keep this in mind. The excess crops that people have, that is their savings account. That is their insurance against hard times. So having some extra grains to store is also a really important aspect for poor families. So I want to just give you this vision, this orientation to kind of what a farm in Africa looks like. So what I'm seeing right now in a lot of agricultural programs that the U.S. government is promoting around the world, and you should know I am up there on Capitol Hill. I am fighting for those dollars not to be cut. I'm a huge, huge advocate for U.S. foreign assistance, and especially agricultural assistance. I'll tell you an interesting story. The people that you don't see in Dadaab, this is the story that doesn't always get told about these crises. There are 200 million people that you don't see in Dadaab. And why? It's because the U.S. government and others have been investing in agriculture programs in Ethiopia since the famine in the 1980s. Those people did not go hungry in this season, right? We helped them grow their own food. We helped them figure out how to store it, how to keep it, so that when the next famine came, they wouldn't fall victim to it. Most of the people in Dadaab were from Somalia. And the reason we didn't invest there, terrorist activity, very difficult place to work, on and on. And that's the difference. That's the difference. Agriculture works. Agriculture programs work. They don't work overnight, but they work. And just think how much worse this famine would have been had we not supported Ethiopia in making those changes.